After 50, life teaches us that time is too precious to waste on what silently causes us pain. There comes a moment when the noise of false friendship outweighs solitude. And it's at that moment that many people discover a bitter truth. Some people didn't come to add, they came to drain. Arthur Schopenhauer, known for his clear and sharp view of human nature, said that suffering arises mainly from living with other people. Not all people, but those who carry destructive patterns within themselves and disguise them with sympathy, politeness, or even family ties. According to him, a person gains true freedom only when they learn to protect their own mind, and that includes protection from bad company. Have you ever felt exhausted after a conversation in which there was no conflict? Have you realized that no matter how much you smile around certain people, your soul feels empty? Have you ever offered help to someone who, deep down, simply wanted to manipulate your goodwill? It's not a coincidence. These are patterns. And recognizing these patterns can be the difference between a bitter old age and a peaceful maturity. Schopenhauer believed that wisdom lies not in accumulating attachments, but in knowing how to choose who to walk with. There is nothing more destructive than staying close to those who gradually erode you. That's why he recommended solitude, restraint, and strategic distance, not out of arrogance, but out of respect for one's own inner world. In this video, we'll explore 7 behavioral patterns that are clear warning signs. Behaviors we often ignore out of politeness, for fear of seeming cold, or because we insist everyone deserves another chance. But with time, we begin to realize that some people don't change. And no matter how much we try to save the relationship, it keeps drowning us. This video isn't about promoting isolation, but about encouraging discernment. It's not about approaching everyone with suspicion, it's about learning to notice the signs and, most of all, respecting your own intuition. That uneasy feeling that arises when someone walks into the room, that growing discomfort when you sense you're being listened to with contempt, the exhaustion that comes not from the body, but from the soul. These are not foolish signs, they are warnings. And Schopenhauer, with his characteristic brutal clarity, teaches us that most of life's suffering could be avoided if we simply knew whom we should never share a table with. So if you're over 50 or approaching that age, perhaps it's time to take silent inventory. Who truly deserves your presence? Who respects your boundaries? Who listens with their heart? And most importantly, who helps you even when you don't need anything? In this video, we'll go through these 7 behavioral patterns, grounded in Schopenhauer's philosophy slowly but firmly. And in each of them, you may recognize someone. Or perhaps you'll realize what kind of pain you've already left behind. Either way, this message isn't about others, it's about you. And about how to protect what you still have, your peace, your truth, your life. So take a deep breath, stay until the end, and prepare to meet clarity. Because keeping a distance from certain people is not pride. It is healing. And often it is the only way to live out the rest of your life with dignity. Schopenhauer was one of the few philosophers who dared to state, without ambiguity, that the presence of others is the greatest source of disruption to our inner peace. But he wasn't talking about just anyone. Above all, he meant those who see the world as a battlefield where everything is a disguised competition. Do you know such people? People who, even in the simplest situations, feel the need to prove they are better, stronger, smarter, or more successful. They don't know how to share, only how to compare. And every moment of interaction with them turns into a silent contest. You tell them about a trip they've already taken, a longer one. You talk about health problems, they've been through something more serious. You share a joyful moment with your children, they're quick to point out that their kids are better raised, more attentive, more generous. It doesn't matter what the topic is to them, everything is a game of vanity. Such behavior is exhausting because it turns shared life into surveillance. You feel constantly judged, as if you're on trial in some invisible court. And the most dangerous part is that, without even realizing it, you start to doubt your own accomplishments, hide your joys, or even feel ashamed of your own life. Schopenhauer would say that this constant comparison is a disguised form of hostility. There is no real friendship where there is constant rivalry, because friendship, in its most noble form, requires emotional equality, not a clash of egos. It requires space for the other to exist without attack, belittlement, or sabotage. With age, we come to understand an important truth. To be with someone who genuinely rejoices in your victories is rare, and it is incredibly valuable. When that doesn't happen, when every conversation ends with the other person trying to outdo you, something inside you begins to tighten. Joy fades, trust weakens, the relationship loses its light and becomes a burden. People who compete in everything live in fear of their own insignificance. They cannot bear to see someone else shine because it forces them to confront their own shadow. That's why they're always ready to strike back, to showcase themselves, to shift the focus away from you. But this constant mirroring is not affection. It's insecurity turned into performance. And don't be mistaken, it doesn't matter how long you've known someone or how many good memories you share. If your relationship has become a stage for disguised battles, it's time to reassess. Because what unites us is not the need to defeat one another, but the freedom to be ourselves, with both flaws and achievements, without fear of being diminished. Schopenhauer teaches that true greatness lies in the silent refusal to engage in conflict, not to prove superiority, but to preserve peace. Sometimes, the wisest way to win is to walk away. Among all the types of people Schopenhauer warned us about, there was one he considered especially dangerous. The person who feeds on the pain of others. Not because they directly cause it, but because they find satisfaction in witnessing it. This is the person who approaches you in moments of weakness not to help, but to feel stronger in the face of your vulnerability. Such behavior is vile. These people don't shout, they don't attack. They appear interested, present, and attentive. But when you share your loss, your pain, or your disappointment, you notice that they don't offer real comfort. They offer curiosity. They want to know more. They ask for details. And when the conversation ends, you feel even more drained. Schopenhauer would say that such relationships are driven by a cruel instinct, the desire to affirm oneself through the suffering of another. And often, it hides behind the mask of compassion. They claim to be sympathetic, but they're never around when things are going well. They show up every time there's a fall, a crisis, grief, or failure, like vultures circling above, waiting for the right moment to land. These people enjoy your pain because, deep down, it eases the envy they feel. When you're healthy, your light unsettles them. When you suffer, they feel balanced again. They don't say it, but their behavior reveals it. There is a hidden satisfaction in your misfortunes. And there's something even more damaging. When you live with such a person, you start to question the legitimacy of your own feelings. You begin to hide your pain, or worse, feel ashamed of it, because you realize, whenever you open up, you won't find support, only observation. Schopenhauer valued solitude as a form of self-preservation. To him, it was better to be alone than in bad company. And this is especially true during moments of fragility. Pain is heavy enough on its own. To share it with someone who feeds on it is to turn it into a prison. In your 50s and beyond, you learn to recognize these smiling figures. You understand that presence is not the same as care, and that not every offered shoulder is sincere. That's why it's so important to notice who stays by your side when life begins to bloom again. Those who disappear when we smile, but appear when we fall, are not with us. They just take whatever they can get. Such relationships are dangerous because they confuse us. They make us believe that we are being heard. But in reality, we are being emotionally exploited, and when we finally realize this, the damage is already done. We stop trusting not only others, but also ourselves. So stay away from those who come to you only during the storm. True friendship shows itself in the silence of stability, in the joy of achievement, in the relief of healing. Those who come only to watch the burning house never helped build the foundation. It hurts to be a spectacle. It requires shelter. And if Schopenhauer taught us anything, it's that the soul needs peace more than company. If you like reflections like these, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. Living with a person who never admits mistakes is like talking to a mirrored wall. Everything you say comes back distorted, and in the end, you get tired and start doubting yourself. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that the inability to admit one's flaws is not a sign of strength but of intellectual and moral weakness. For him, unbending pride was a reflection of a mind trapped in the illusion of superiority. Such people suffer from a chronic fear of being wrong. They distort facts, alter narratives, and when confronted, shift the blame onto something or someone else. The world is always wrong and they themselves are never wrong. The most dangerous thing is that they do this naturally, as if it's part of their logic. This is not just about avoiding responsibility, but about creating a parallel reality where guilt never exists. You can patiently argue, provide evidence, recall conversations, nothing helps. Their ego is too fragile to accept the idea of imperfection. And anyone who tries to point out a mistake eventually becomes an enemy. They would rather end the relationship than admit they are wrong. Schopenhauer regarded such behavior as a primitive form of defense. According to the philosopher, those who refuse to acknowledge their limitations live in constant tension, as if any criticism threatens their very identity. And this tension makes any relationship unstable. There is no room for growth because everything turns into defense. There is no dialogue, only a dispute over versions. Living with such a person, you are forced to constantly give in, avoid certain topics, and walk on eggshells. There is no ease, no sincerity. It's a minefield where every conversation can turn into a confrontation. Worse yet, this attitude prevents true reconciliation. After all, an apology is an act of humility that allows for healing. When someone refuses to take this step, wounds remain open, and over time scars form that repel even the most patient people. In maturity, we learn that to live well, perfection is not required, only a willingness to fix what has been broken. And this willingness exists only where there is the courage to make mistakes. Those who lack it create shallow relationships supported by appearances and hidden resentments. Stay away from those who turn every conflict into a war of versions, those who prefer pride over truth. These people do not know how to grow and do not allow others to grow with them. For where there is no acknowledgement, there is no transformation. Living together requires emotional honesty. And honesty is not just about saying what you think. It is the ability to admit that you have failed. Those who lack this ability will live surrounded by fragile relationships, always on the verge of collapse. Schopenhauer reminds us that admitting a mistake does not diminish anyone. On the contrary, it strengthens you. It is an act of inner freedom, and those who freely acknowledge their flaws also deserve trust. Those who never make mistakes never learn, and those who never learn repeat their mistakes at the expense of their peace. Not every discomfort arises from noise. Sometimes, some people are irritated precisely by your silence. The calm you have painstakingly achieved after years of storms begins to annoy those who live in chaos. Schopenhauer clearly understood this. Serenity is a rare treasure, and that is why it provokes dissatisfaction. Some people cannot stand someone else's equilibrium. They need drama, tension, and constant conflict. When they see someone calm, stable, and introspective, they interpret it as coldness, arrogance, or aloofness. But in reality, it's simply maturity. Such people find it hard to accept that you no longer react the way you used to. You no longer get involved in pointless arguments or despair over minor offenses. You don't need to constantly explain yourself. You have learned to choose silence as a form of self-care, and for those who live in chaos, this is unbearable. Schopenhauer regarded silence not as an absence, but as the full presence of oneself. When we fall silent, we are not running away from the world. We are simply stepping away from what is useless. External noise dominates only those who have not found peace within themselves. And when someone attains that peace, they become a target for those who have not yet succeeded. People who envy your calmness try to provoke you. They ask leading questions, veil criticism, bring up unnecessary topics, all to destabilize you. Not because they want to build a connection, but because they want to throw you off balance. They want to see how you react, lose control, and return to the noisy field where they feel comfortable. These attacks are usually indirect. They come as subtle comments, judgments disguised as concern, or irony wrapped in humor. But the goal is clear: to destroy what you have built inside. If you don't recognize this quickly enough, you will start doubting your own choices. You'll wonder, am I too cold? Should I try harder to please? But the truth is that your calmness disturbs them precisely because it highlights their own lack of peace. In mature life, silence ceases to be emptiness and becomes a protection. We learn to listen more, speak less, and avoid useless conversations. We understand that we are not obligated to respond to everything, and that silence is often more eloquent than any answer. Anyone who does not respect your solitude does not respect your evolution, because the world you carry today was not given to you for free. It cost tears, losses, and new beginnings. It was built through pain and time, and anyone who tries to destroy it with empty words shows that they are not ready to walk alongside you. Leave without guilt. Preserve what you have achieved. People who cannot stand your silence most likely never truly tolerated your presence and unconsciously want to pull you back into the noise where they live. Schopenhauer teaches us that wisdom lies in knowing what to avoid. And avoiding those who disrupt your peace is one of the greatest signs of self-respect. True listening is a rare art. Arthur Schopenhauer said that the act of listening requires not only attention, but also a temporary suspension of the ego. Only those who are capable of stepping away from their own vanity for a few minutes and opening themselves to another person's reality can truly listen. That is why people who cannot listen eventually destroy the deepest bonds. You try to speak. You speak calmly. Open your heart and realize that the other person is only present in body. Their mind is already elsewhere, preparing a response, recalling themselves, waiting for their turn to regain control of the conversation. There is no exchange. There is a monologue disguised as interaction. These people do not listen. They interrupt, change the subject, divert attention. They turn every conversation into a mirror. If you tell them about your pain, they tell you about even greater pain. If you share joy, they treat it as trivial, not because they don't care, but because they don't know how to quiet their own desire to be the protagonist. Schopenhauer saw this as a clear sign of emotional mediocrity. In his view, true character is revealed in how we behave with others when we are not the center of attention. And those who cannot listen are actually trapped in a bubble of vanity so dense that there is no room for anyone else. Such coexistence is lonely, even if accompanied by. You leave the conversation more tired than when you entered it. You feel ignored, unnoticed, and gradually start to fall silent because you realize that conversations change nothing. They change nothing. They only expose your closeness to a wall polished by indifference. And this is dangerous, because forced silence is not rest but accumulated disappointment. And living with a person who never listens turns every attempt at dialogue into a waste of time. Over time, this pattern of behavior undermines any attachment, no matter how strong it was at the beginning. Maturity teaches us that listening is not just hearing words, it is also perceiving what has not been said. It means noticing pauses, silences, and hesitations. It means showing your presence without imposing yourself. And when someone listens to us in this way, we feel relief. We feel that we belong to ourselves, that we are seen. People who do not listen turn the surrounding space into a stage. They are always on stage, even when there is no audience. And you, who just wanted an honest conversation, end up becoming a spectator at a continuous show. Be firm. Pay attention. Are your words truly heard, or merely tolerated? And remember, true listening is a gift that not everyone is willing to give, and this says much more about them than about you. Schopenhauer would say that the silence of loneliness is better than the noise of misunderstanding, because the presence of someone who never listens can be more deafening than any absence. There are people whose presence is not constant, but strategically important. They appear like lightning, quickly, urgently, intensely, but only when it suits them. They are warm, sociable, even affectionate as long as they can get something from you. When they cease to be useful, they disappear into the same silence from which they came. Schopenhauer considered this one of the cruelest traits of human nature, treating others as a means rather than as an end. Perhaps you have encountered this yourself. A phone call that begins with kindness but soon turns into a request. A message that comes after months of silence and ends with a favor asked. A visit that is not really about you but about a need. And when that need is fulfilled, distance takes its place again. Such people do not share the journey. They simply choose shortcuts. They know nothing about your days of struggle, do not rejoice in your small victories, and do not ask how you are when things are going well. But the moment they need help, attention, or resources, they become unexpected allies. This is friendship of convenience, not care. Schopenhauer warned against such connections because they corrupt the idea of genuine human relationships. When someone treats you merely as a tool, not only trust but also your dignity is at stake. We are reduced to a function, a service, a momentary benefit. Worse yet, we often fail to realize this for a long time because these people know how to disguise it. They know how to flatter, create a sense of connection, give the impression that they care. But it is always conditional. They exist only as long as they get what they want. When you recognize this pattern of behavior, it is natural to feel disappointed. The hurt comes not only from being used, but also from the illusion. You thought you were building a bridge, but the other person was simply passing over it. There was no exchange, only transit. Over time, such relationships leave silent scars. You begin to close off, doubt good intentions, and not trust even those who genuinely care for you. And that is the greatest damage. When someone uses you, they also steal a part of your spontaneity. That is why setting clear boundaries is so important. It's not about hardening your heart, but about protecting your energy. By the age of 50, we understand that generosity does not mean unlimited availability, that helping others cannot come at the cost of our balance, time, and health. And that saying no is often the most honest way to preserve relationships or end them with dignity. Schopenhauer reminds us that the value of relationships lies in their constancy, not in their usefulness. Those who come with an outstretched hand only to take, but never to give, do not want coexistence. They want to gain an advantage, and maturity allows us to refuse such presence. Walk away without resentment from those who see you only as a resource. Your presence deserves to be honored, not exploited. And anyone who does not know how to recognize this has never truly been with you. Nothing destroys relationships faster than mockery directed at the most intimate feelings. There are people who cannot stand depth, who are irritated when someone shows vulnerability, sensitivity, or genuine emotions. Instead of accepting it, they ridicule. What should be a space of trust becomes a stage for humiliation disguised as humor. According to Schopenhauer, such emotional contempt is one of the clearest forms of spiritual ignorance. When you share something sacred, an old fear, a sensitive memory, a recent pain, you expect to be understood, not necessarily with full empathy, but at least to be listened to with respect. But some people respond with sarcasm. They joke it off, roll their eyes, laugh, and at that moment, something inside you breaks. Shame takes the place of confidence. These people mock not out of open malice, but out of a deep emotional incapacity. For them, feeling is a threat. Anything that escapes rational control, anything that requires attentive listening or genuine compassion, causes discomfort, and the easiest way to handle it is to turn it into ridicule. Schopenhauer, though considered a pessimist, deeply valued genuine attachments. He believed that the human soul carries a pain that cannot be rationalized, it can only be acknowledged, and that mocking these feelings is a sign of a narrow mind, incapable of understanding what it means to be truly human. Living with a person who does not respect others' emotions means living in a state of constant emotional vigilance. You think twice before speaking. You feel the need to defend yourself even in the simplest conversations. Little by little, you stop trusting not only the person but also the validity of your own feelings. Such contempt breeds another kind of loneliness. It's when you are accompanied but feel invisible. Because the truest part of you, the part you feel deeply, is seen as exaggeration or fragility, and no one deserves to live with that burden. Maturity teaches us that deep feelings are not a weakness. On the contrary, they are a sign of emotional clarity. Those who have the courage to show their emotions demonstrate strength, while those who despise them reveal fear. Fear of looking inside themselves, fear of confronting their own pain. So stay away from those who turn feelings into a joke, from those who do not know how to accept an outburst without judgment, from those who reject what matters to you. These people are not ready for true coexistence because living alongside others requires respect for what is unseen. Memories, traumas, hopes, scars. Schopenhauer would say that respect for the suffering of others is one of the highest forms of compassion, and anyone who does not respect your pain does not deserve your attachment. Preserve yourself. And remember, being sensitive does not mean being weak. It means being human, and those who mock this only reveal their own inner suffering. Life does not become brighter with age by chance. It becomes brighter when we learn to carry only what benefits us, and this applies to people as well. Arthur Schopenhauer, relentlessly studying human behavior, concluded that most suffering comes from poor choices in our relationships. Therefore, walking away is not cowardice, it is maturity. There comes a moment when insisting on certain relationships becomes more painful than enduring loneliness. True wisdom lies in recognizing that moment. When gestures turn hostile, words lose their warmth, and the presence of another person becomes a burden, it is time to make a silent but resolute choice, to preserve your peace above all else. Leaving does not mean breaking off with aggression or isolating yourself from the world. It means choosing whom to walk with, and, moreover, choosing where you no longer want to go, because every connection we cultivate requires time, energy, and presence. And at a mature age, all of this holds a value that must not be wasted. Schopenhauer reminds us that we should not live for others. Those who base their stability on others will live oscillating between praise and criticism, between acceptance and rejection. True freedom comes when you realize that the best company you can have is yourself. And to preserve your mental, emotional, and spiritual health, you must say no to certain attachments, even if they seem harmless at first glance. It's not about bitterness, it's about clarity. People who mock, compete, ignore, manipulate, or only come close when they need something, leave barely noticeable traces of exhaustion. And over time, this exhaustion takes its toll. Their life force diminishes, self-confidence collapses, joy fades. That is why learning to protect yourself is so important. Perhaps you have already tried talking, explaining, enduring, insisting, and still nothing changed. The truth is that some people only function when they have someone to exploit, dominate, or belittle. And if you refuse to play that role, they simply lose interest. And as painful as it may sound, That is freeing. You don't need a crowd around you. You need authenticity, simple, easy relationships where real exchange happens, where you can exist without constantly justifying yourself, where you are heard, respected, and accepted. At 50 and beyond, the greatest achievement is not how many friends you have, but how much burden you have left behind. The peace you seek lies not in trying to change others, but in accepting that some paths are not worth walking again. Schopenhauer said that those who protect themselves from useless communication are already halfway shielded from unhappiness. And that is exactly what you deserve, to be saved from everything that doesn't fit, that doesn't heal, that doesn't honor your presence. Leave firmly, but without hatred. From now on, you must take with you only what benefits you. Leave the rest behind in silence, with gratitude, and with freedom. If this reflection resonated with you, enjoy the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to receive more reflections like this. That way, you won't miss any new content. Stay well, and see you next time.